Welcome to the Questions Asked podcast. In this episode, we started off diving into the technical landscape of site reliability engineering teams and how Sibila Bijedic set them up for success. But as the conversation unfolded, we uncovered something even more essential: the human side of high-performing teams. We explored the importance of psychological safety, especially in remote and distributed teams, and how leaders can foster a culture where team members feel safe to experiment, share ideas, and even fail without fear of blame. Today, we're focusing on how to help teams be motivated to deliver towards those goals with value. How would you describe a little bit your role?
That's a good question. I have some technical knowledge that comes in handy sometimes, and I have to sort of be wary of proposing any solutions, and sort of working that balance with my team since they're very technical, but still having the ability to understand the nomenclature, terminology, and kind of guide them through what they still need to do and relate to them on that level. So it's a fine balance that I walk with almost day to day basis. It's very challenging to work with such technical teams who are always, pushing for the next new thing, looking into tech stack, but hardly ever stopping to possibly look at ways to improve and help them out differently, like with different processes, different tooling that can actually make them be even more streamlined because they're always so laser focused on the next thing they want to deliver. So for us, the key is to look for that efficiency and automate where we really need to instead of having a completely automated mindset for everything that we do. It's mostly looking into like what are the things that make the most sense to streamline in order to be that much more efficient, and not just focus on all the like technological advances and tech stack and what they do, but more so like as people, as a team, what makes more sense for you, how to actually work together better. So I help bridge that gap between the technology stack and all the fine stuff that we kind of do with continuous improvement and just looking at ourselves as a team that can be much more efficient and be friendly at the same time.
And so you mentioned before we got started that you are now working with a team of coaches, a team of scrum masters in the Agile world, that may be called that way. But they're still
Mhm.
coaches. And so you're not telling them how to deliver, you're not making them deliver a certain task. You are constantly working towards motivating that team to focus on value.
Yeah, for us, the growth mindset is where it really needs to be. I'm not so much focused on like, hey, here's how we're delivering. We're doing it in 2 week increments. It's more so like, are we delivering the right things? Are there better ways? Is there more efficient ways? Is there a way to deliver more quickly? Are there just better ways? We're not that focused on like the semantics. It's more so like what works for us and what we can borrow from different frameworks to ensure that our team is the most efficient and most effective they can be.
All right. So you want your team to be efficient and effective. And so how do you create a team that is so self-motivated in a way that has the power to take their own decisions, to be agile to a certain point, to have their own processes and ways of working? How do you get started with a team like that?
We treat almost everything as an experiment. The team that I'm currently with is starting ground up. We're cross-functional, we're cross-collaborative. We all report into different hierarchy and different managers. So we basically oriented ourselves around a very important initiative rather than a product vertical or anything of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's truly important for the business as well as the technical folks that we work with and that they're passionate about. So we're trying to stand everything ground up and show how this can actually work towards our benefits and be sort of like a poster child, for lack of a better word, for the rest of the org on how this actually comes to be from like very minimal just getting the right people in and right personalities, and then how we actually work through things and provide that mechanism for feedback. And here's how we work, here's what we do, here's how we went about this. So there's a lot of feedback loop in how we work and how much courage we have and how open and transparent we are. So I'm really helping the team understand that this is just for them to let go of certain things and basically be, exemplary team for the rest of the org, or how this can actually work towards their benefit, rather than, hey, we're just stuck working on this product vertical, things are not as exciting. It's more so, here's this thing that we want to work on, and how do we make it as best as possible for our clients, for our internal folks that are going to use this. How do we solicit feedback from other teams and keep our minds open to that, and just basically work across the org to be absolutely open, transparent, honest, and courageous, and just have that ability to be vulnerable at the same time. So it's a lot of work, but we started with folks that we thought were going to gravitate towards that, and they are. And there was a lot of coaching and a lot of mentoring that went into that whole process to enable people to be that open, that courageous, that honest with themselves as well as others in the org.
And I'm hearing two interesting things, if I may pick some out. As a coach, this is kind of where my brain goes really quickly. The first thing that I heard was that you kind of pre-select people in the team for fit, so that they fit a certain set of values, which connects to the second thing that I picked up on, is that you reiterated it a couple of times. Like, it seems that you're working based on a full set of values. How does that work?
Yeah, it took a few tries. It's not like we absolutely selected people. We just understood who gravitates towards what after we've become familiar with what they're passionate about, what they're motivated about. So when we stood up the team, we looked for certain characteristics and certain values that these folks hold, and it took a few tries to get that in. And we were totally open, you can come work with us, and if this doesn't fit for you, you can absolutely leave, and nobody's going to say anything about that. Like, it's absolutely open towards that completely. And then, but if you want to just power through and keep figuring things out, that's also welcome. So we really fostered that open, collaborative environment for everybody that wanted to come in and do good things with us, or if they at some point felt like this wasn't a fit for them anymore, then absolutely you could go back to your whatever other team. So we're trying to promote that type of culture where you gravitate towards the initiative that interests you the most and you're most passionate about.
So it feels a little bit like what you kickstarted is like, as you said, the poster child is like the team that role models what you would like other teams to eventually start integrating as well. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, yes. And of course, we're a smallish team now and we want to grow, and there will be other initiatives that we undertake, and maybe the team composition will change based off of that. Because again, we're keeping things open-minded and collaborative and open to the feedback mechanism. So we understand if there's folks who gravitate towards what we're doing now and they're like, oh, we absolutely want to try, there is that opening for them to come on board and be like, absolutely, if you want to join us for a few sprints and see how things work and you really like it, then why not stay on this initiative? And if you don't like it and it doesn't work for you for some reason, go back to your other initiatives. So we're really, really looking to empower that type of behavior and those types of values.
Oh wow, that's brilliant. And so, you mentioned a couple of times delivering value and working with business. How do you know as a team, or how do you help a team understand what value delivery really is? How do you help them grasp and prioritize around that?
We've had some, not just chats, but sort of workshops and talks with business to bridge that gap. And especially with technical teams that I'm on right now, and this is, again, a highly technical team, we want them to understand what this does for the end user, which is ultimately who our clients are and how it impacts them. So if we're working certain compliance or security initiatives, in the end, it's the features and everything that's going to support them in their daily work and how we enable that and what it does for them. So if it's like streamlining certain processes and you cut out like 3-4 hours out of their day for actually building this thing, they should know about this. They should know how it affects them. So we enable that. We make sure that we talk to our business stakeholders on why they're requesting these things, how it impacts our end user, how reliable we are, because again, reliability is something that we're very passionate about. And if our system is available to them 24/7 or whatever uptime it needs to be, versus that they're angry with us, or that sometimes we get like, not such good feedback on things that we're not available when they need to pull in certain documents, then we take that into account and we think about that, we build that in. That's the quality that we talk about when we deliver value, how it impacts our end user. Are they happy with us? If they're not happy, if they're becoming unhappy, what is it that makes them unhappy and how do we address that? And then translate that over into our technical stack. Okay, this is the stuff we need to work on. And then we can talk about our business value with that and our business reps, product owners, product managers, customer service, usually, and our customer support, and be like, okay, we're going to address this. And as a result of that, what will that do for our customer? And they will tell us exactly that. And then we'll know, okay, what if we address that even more incrementally or iteratively and we do even better? Are they going to be even happier? Absolutely. And then we'll go with that mindset. That's how we deliver value.
So you allow your team to have shorter cycles at one moment to make sure that they can deliver value faster and know if it's the right value, that in a way.
Yes. Yeah, we enable reviews. We're very open to our demos and showcases and reviews. Yes, we sprint on a bi-weekly basis, but it's not just that. Like, we will make sure that we have conversations with business reps and stakeholders whenever we need to. So we keep the communication lines really open and really have productive relationships with business folks. We've strived very much to make that happen, to keep that communication open. So we may have actually done more in terms of meetups and, spent initially the time to get to know them and what kind of makes them tick and what sort of communication style they prefer, or basically enable the mechanism that they're going to give them what they need to. So we invested a little more time in the beginning to understand like how to work with them exactly and what they expect from us. But the benefits that we've reaped and that we saw were actually much, much, much bigger as a result of the initial time spent. So now we just have a well-oiled machine that works. Hey, on Friday morning, I expect to know where things are so that I can talk to the customer and I'll tell you what they said. And you can build that into your whatever feedback, into your backlog, and figure out if that's the next thing we want to work on. So we basically smoothed out those relationships by just spending enough time with our business upfront to understand what the expectations are, what they really want from us, and how to communicate out to them.
And so your function is more of a coach than of a manager or of even a mentor. Your work, your toolkit in a way is the coaching space. And I hear you say a lot of times we, and I'm guessing it's mostly you're coaching the team to be able to do this themselves. But at one point, I also heard you say, and then I go speak to the business people. Where do you draw the line between what you're coaching and what you're actually managing in your role?
I'm trying to enable and empower folks on the team to, bypass me as a result of some of these things. So it's more so, here's the example of how I work with business and here's what they expect. And should I not be on this team tomorrow, you should be able to have the same type of chat with them as well. So that's when I interchange we and I, when I take the direct responsibility for having a conversation versus, hey, the team needs to speak to the business folks about this. It might not necessarily be myself, it could be anybody from the team. And we've had some chats about like what that means and what they've come to expect. So now there's more like, hey, if you can't, I'll go do that on your behalf. I've tried to enable that behavior because as a team, we should all know what's going on at any given moment on our team and what we're building. And that's the sort of mindset that I'm trying to coach this team exactly on, to be able to like, hey, we're a shared unit. Our shared understanding is that this is what's being done and this is how we communicate out. So anybody on the team, Scrum Master or not, can actually bridge this gap and have that conversation, set up 15 minutes or whatnot, and have that chat.
Very nice.
So in terms of that, the team that I work with, I have absolutely no like management component in it. It's more coaching and mentoring. And then we're just trying to scale this up so that the rest of the org might look similarly to this. But of course, nuances, because each team and each team composition is going to be different, but there will be shared things in between all of us. So when we try to enable the business speak, this is sort of like the template. This is what worked. This is what's expected. So should you start working with the same set of people, this is kind of what we did, and you don't have to go through the same things. Here are the expectations, and here's how you can adopt it.
And so, if you're functioning as a bridge, a coaching bridge in a way between business and developers in such a technical environment, how do you tackle risk at that moment? How do you make sure that you can still be agile about things and deliver iteratively while also handling, well, the risk that comes with
Um, there's been challenges in terms of that. For example, for certain initiative that we have deadlines on currently because of some compliance or some, you know, deadline that's not really internal but more external, it's more difficult. So we just have a lot of chats about like de-scoping and understanding how that will affect us, and then de-risking it and ensuring that we have the chats with different groups, because everything that we do is dependent on other groups, that we have those conversations sooner than later and follow their working agreements as well. So, for example, if the turnaround for some infrastructure team is 4 weeks, we're not going to wait until whenever to have that conversation. We're going to be proactive and have it 2 months ahead so that we know the answers to what we're building. So it becomes sort of like a catch up with the design and developing at the same time. So we're looking into, hey, we're not doing this in phases. Forget the waterfall approach of things. It's mostly they're all smushed together. So we're having conversations via design, implementation. There's the feedback mechanism. We need to talk to security team. This came up, and it's like just we're always on our toes. So it becomes a little bit of a prioritization game at times, and we address that. Our stand ups are a great place to have that conversation, and should something come up, and we're able to pivot very quickly as a result of that, because we've learned to surface things as soon as they come to us and to have the proactive approach. Well, okay, we don't know how to deal with this, but this is now a blocker. So we'll actively work to remove it right away. So our plan from yesterday, just basically we pivoted from, and now we're going to do things differently, but let's not lose sight of what we were doing initially. So it becomes sort of like, hey, did we forget what we set out to do last week? Have our plans changed? Our sprint doesn't look anything like it did 2 weeks ago. I'm like, how do we keep this up? And for so far, the teams have actually been embracing that style of working. But then I worry a little bit about the burnout. Should things, like start to pivot too much, too quickly, and we lose sight of who we are and our identity and what we're really building, then we should have those conversations. So sometimes if I see a little bit of frustration or something seep in, I will basically pull the team together and be like, okay, we need to talk about this. Is this who we are still? Are we still building the thing that we set out to build? If we're not, like, why not? And then basically just try and keep addressing that. So usually we just like set it back on track, because we find ways, even if we pivot quickly, there's reasons for doing that. And we're not shy to ask about, like, hey, you've asked us to pivot maybe 3 times this month. Like, what's going to be different next month? We don't want to keep doing this constantly, and we don't want to burn out the team. And more often than not, people in our business and stakeholders and everybody, once we get into a room, are actually very understanding of that. And the teams go like, well, that went easier than I thought. That was a very productive conversation, and like they seem to be one-on-one with us and understand like where we're coming from, so that's good. And it really does boil down to conversations sometimes, just having that space and understanding that we can have that space to have these honest conversations.
I was going to ask about that because we've both worked in these technical environments where certain people find it sometimes easier to just put their heads down and write the code, get to work, make it happen, deliver, etc. How do you create, or how did you create such a high psychological safe environment where people feel actually motivated to come together, to huddle together around a topic and work it out as humans, not as task finishers in a way, but really as we're human, we're delivering value. These are our own sets of values we hold on to, and this is how we're working with our different partners. How did you do that?
We've enabled space and retros, which seems like a common, thing to do this in, to do that. And we've really talked about how to make ourselves accountable to what we're proposing. So it's not just like, here's another retro, and we said we were going to do this, and then we don't do it. We follow through, and we'll have maybe even quicker retros, like after stand up, and we're like, okay, last week's or last day's demo didn't go so well. Like, what could we have done differently? And we don't have to wait until the next retro to have that conversation. We'll do it at the moment, after the moment. So we do a lot of huddles. We enable the space, like sort of like a scrum room if we were not remote, but we have a dedicated huddle space where we go like, I need help with this, and I'm going to be on huddle in 15 minutes. Is there anybody else that can come and do this with me? More often than not, people are like, okay, give me a few moments. I need to refill my coffee, and I'll hop on and I'll help and see what's going on. But it took a little bit of time to get there and have people sort of embrace that notion of like, here's this huddle space. And if you have some problems or some questions and you're banging your head, you can go there and ask. We've looked into possible like little games that we could all play and, online and whatnot. We enabled space like for video gaming, even after work, or basically like not, just a scheduled happy hour, but like, well, here's tea time. I'm drinking tea. Would you like to join me? And we'll start up a conversation about like somebody really loves this tea, or like, here's a recommendation that, or here's a movie that I just watched and I really thought it stunk, and this is reasons off. And the other person goes like, well, I thought it was okay. And then we'll get into a discussion. So it was more so reaching out to people on a more personal level to make them comfortable, to get to know you as who you are when you're not at work, and bring yourself authentically to work. And it just took a little bit of work in some not comfortable situations to get to know the people you work with. But we've meshed well with the personalities and people being able to share and enable that space to share that we know each other and what makes us tick. And we know who we are even when we're not at work, but when we're in our personal lives. So I know that folks that I work with, I know their pets' names. And if they've had like an issue last week, I will make sure that I ask about the pet and see like, how's your doggy doing? And that goes a long way because people remember that, and they're like, people are reaching out on a more personal level. So we sort of become friends at work, and that as a result of that, we're able to hop on a huddle and be like, I'm banging my head on this for 2 days. Can you help out? It becomes that much more easier to actually pose that question to others rather than like, I'll figure this out eventually, and be stuck on it and never really figure it out because I don't have the open and collaborative environment to be able to say something like that.
Yeah. It sounds like you've been able to recreate the perfect office space, even while you're not in the office. There's a lot of talk today in like everybody has to go back to the office, and
Mm-hmm.
people are going to have to. I read a wonderful article this morning in the Guardian about how we are task masking or LARPing into being busy,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like when you have the opportunity to create such a psychological safe environment for any team, even the most tech team out there, um, the human takes over, and humans create great products because now we have a relationship, and so now we're accountable towards each other for also delivering on not just the product but also the promise that I made to that
Mm-hmm.
person, etc. So it sounds like that may actually be the key to success of creating a psychological safe environment.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it took some time because some folks are not as comfortable being on camera, but then I can't gauge if I'm gonna be interrupting them while they're talking or they want to say something and they don't have a Zoom, uh, action on of raising their hand or something. So it took a little bit of, trial and error to understand like how comfortable people are with sharing. Some folks would have avatars and they would build avatars based on like, hi, here I am in space, and then it's just like, okay, are you really in space? And then they would basically enable the video and stuff like that, so they would just become that much more comfortable with us talking about that. Then it's no longer really an issue of whether somebody's going to have a camera on or if they're going to follow like some meeting etiquette of not interrupting and whatnot. We just became that much more comfortable to enable the space that we had in the office, even with people that we really didn't work in an office with. Because again, there's folks that came on board during Corona, they started remotely, they remained remotely. So we would meet up maybe once a year or something. But we really tried to enable that space to have and see as much of each other as possible and being comfortable, but then also recognize when someone's not being comfortable and they're able to say like, "Oh, today I'm not gonna be on camera for reasons off," and they're like, "Are you all right?" "I'm all right, but I'm dealing with this," and then we would just leave it alone. So it's a fine balance when of how and when and what to like pick up on versus kind of like when to leave it alone and understand. And then again comes from like knowing each other personally and what makes us tick and how we work and what we kind of bring to the table day to day and when we need to be heads down versus, hey, today's a good day for us to be together and just like shoot the breeze and whatnot
Yeah.
versus not today. So it does help foster that kind of relationship if you are comfortable being on camera and talking and enabling similar space as if you were in the office. Um, and again, it's a fine balance because sometimes people, even when they're in the office, they're not as comfortable, but they're just pretending to be. So it's picking up on those nuances and the body language and just little things to understand what makes everybody tick.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like it sounds like a way, and it feels that you kind of like fine tuning the system of your team step by step if they need more of your attention or maybe sometimes less of your attention, as you said, that building that bridge, and that. How is business seeing the fruits of that success today? Have you had any feedback so far?
Yeah. We've held showcases to broader orgs, like the in different teams. We've involved different teams as well. We've been very visible and like we've put together like a bunch of documentation for them to go, hey, here. But we're also open to like, I have no idea what you wrote down here. Can I, bend your ear for a second? I'm like, of course you can. We encourage that. We want you to work with us and we want you to understand like how we work and what you can take back to your teams. So we're open to that. We're not, thinking we're this cool team doing cool things and like we're not going to share this with you how we came about, because we would share everything from our brainstorming into all the way like here's a bunch of Jira tickets we created out of how we're going to actually implement this but this is how these tickets came out to be, and here's how we did this. And if you want to use this, and if you want to leverage any of us for like helping you out with that, then by any means just let us know. We'll make the space and we'll make the time. So we're always thinking of like, hey, let's not just be closed off and not share what's going on. We should absolutely share what's really going on and understand like how others can benefit from that. So it's not like, hey, we have the cool toys, we have the cool things, and they're all ours, and it's all our sandbox. It's like everybody's welcome in our sandbox. It depends on like just how much you want to share in it. But if you're just there to tear it down, and we're building this cool sandcastle, and in comes whomever, and we're just gonna tear it down, then we're like, well, why? We built this, and it's with the matter of like you're gonna be able to play with this sandcastle too. We don't need to tear it down because it's just too pretty to be torn down. So it's sort of like, here's how it came about, and here's how we built it, and you can enjoy looking at it and not try and take it down as a result of like, hey, it wasn't what I had in mind. Find good things about it. Assume that positive intent versus like, okay, you just built this to be showing off.
All right.
No, it's never about that. Yeah.
Okay, so those are maybe some risky things that you're kind of open sourcing your secret sauce to building motivated teams in a way in your organization, and so people will have opinions about that, and it's also maybe part of your role to keep the team safe from that type of negativity, I assume.
Yes, and we've had there were also times when we didn't want to reuse something by some other team because we didn't want to enable the competition, right? Because like maybe another team had something similar. So how do you pick between the two? We wouldn't. We wouldn't do that. We would basically, hey, let's start this from scratch because we don't want to use somebody's tech stack over the other and be like, hey, we're playing favorites here. We don't want to do that. And we're very careful about that because it's kind of like, hey, that piece of code works, but so does the other. And I don't want to pick between the two. Can I smush the two together and get the best of both worlds? That's what we want to enable. Be like, okay, we'll work with that team and the other team just alike, and we'll figure out if we can, bring you in as well and figure out if we can work as three teams to the best of our abilities, rather than, hey, that team is doing better things than the other team. We don't want to enable those kinds of behaviors. And sometimes sometimes we're slower because of that, by the way. But ultimately, I think it's a better choice in sort of like keeping that, democracy, if you will, for lack of a better word.
And so I'm guessing it's spreading because, as you say, the secret sauce is open sourced. People can look at how you are working with your team, how you've built such a high functioning system of people, and not just task output people. And so I'm guessing that it may be spreading a little bit here and there, and that's a little bit your job as well in a way. How do you keep motivation up in those teams? That's where your strengths lie in a way.
Yeah, it's spreading, and we often hear good feedback from somebody that we didn't really even work with, but they talk to somebody that we have. So it's kind of like, it's great to hear those things, and it's good to always have good feedback. But it's also a fine line of, okay, as a result of that, we'll just get more work. And like we'll use sight of what we set out to do because we'll get more work. So then we'll need to prioritize even more. And somebody's going to lose out in the end. And then because the team wants to do good things for everything, they will lose motivation to be like, well, now I don't know what I really want to work on because there's 5 things and they seem equally important to all 5 stakeholders. So how do I pick and choose? And then it's just enabling that conversation and understanding like we don't have to address all 5 at the same time. And let's have chats with whomever is asking for 5 things. Maybe we need to do 2, but how do they win out and how do we manage expectations of the other 3? And it's just like a conversation. Well, I didn't mean for you to do this now, but I meant for later time or whenever you have time, and they're like, oh well, that's a different ball game. We can definitely do that. If we don't have to address everything right now, we'll look into it in Q2 or something and have that type of conversation. So how do we decrease the load and how do we have those conversations? So I'm like, okay, my team is getting a little too burnt out or they have too much to work with. So what can we as business stakeholders asking for 5 things do to actually not ask for all of those 5 at the same time? Or maybe we can ask for them in Q3, Q4. Is this really necessary right now? More often than not, and I would say like when it comes to managing those timelines, they are very open to that and they want to foster the collaborative environment this team has and don't want to put additional stress. And they'll ask for like, how can we alleviate that? And when the team hears something like that, they're all like, well, they seem to really care about us. So here's how we do that. And maybe let's, have certain, outings or do something, or maybe a happy hour or something, have a lunch for, hey, we delivered something and, we'll be in the office and business folks will show up as well. Or we'll do a webinar on certain things and do a lunch and learn or something like that. So we'll look for ways to basically reward those behaviors on both ends. But more often than not, it's just a conversation. Teams getting unmotivated, they're getting burnt out. So how do we help them out? And if we have concrete examples, which this team usually does, and says like, this is what we need you to do, then business will be like, absolutely, we can do that. And things will go, things will fly.
And that connects a little bit to the honesty that you alluded to as a value that you have as a team. And so they're honest about their limits in a way. And what I'm also hearing is that you're not only coaching a team, you're coaching the entire ecosystem around the business partners, maybe even some managers around.
Yes.
What would be, and another thing that I'm picked up on a couple of times, you've noticed this in Agile, or when we work in a Scrum framework, for example, at the end of our 2-week sprint, we hold a retrospective, which, usually I always hope that that's a good team coaching moment. But what you're saying is team coaching can happen at any time.
Yes. And we do that. We'll recognize that. And what I'm trying to instill in folks that I coach and team members, especially and individuals on this team, is that anybody can pull that card when they feel like they need to. You don't have to wait for some arbitrary moment to talk about a certain scenario, situation that happened maybe a few moments ago, and you really want to reflect on that. Then by any means, let's make that space and let's make that time right now versus wait for a retro when things and 2 weeks have passed and you hardly even remember how you felt in that moment. It's not cathartic anymore after some time has passed. We adjust that in the moment that it has happened so that it's fresh and we understand like how to address that. Maybe it's not a conversation. Maybe it's just a one-on-one that I will have with the individual on the team if I'm sensing that they're not in their right mindset right now, or I will leave them alone, but I make sure that I follow up and that we follow up with each other at the moment that we need to. Because since we work that well together, we understand like this person's now feeling down. So let's talk about like why that is, or they're feeling down, but they want to be left alone in this moment. So maybe check in with them tomorrow. It's the fine nuances and the cues and clues you've got to follow for what's needed at the moment. And if the coaching moment is needed right now, then we'll enable the space to have it. And if it's not, then we'll leave it alone, because we always have to understand that there's the permission that has to happen to have it right now or later, but we'll enable the space to have it whenever it's needed to be had.
Wow, that's beautiful. How, in those moments, how do you prepare to show up as the person that bridges between people or between burnout, or how do you show up as a coach at that moment, or how do you prepare for that?
I approach it the same way as knowing, like, because they need to know me as well as I know them, and they know each other on the team to understand, am I in that right mindset right now to do that and show up for them right now? And they've learned to recognize the clues and cues just the same as I do in others. And they'll be like, can I bend your ear 5 minutes from now, or can you hop on a huddle right now? And if I'm not in that space, they'll be like, can we hop on a huddle in an hour when you are in that space? So I will show up for them uh, when I need to and when I can, and when they understand that I need to and I can. Because if I can't give them 100%, if I'm distracted and whatnot, they understand that. And they'll be like, okay, let's talk in about an hour and not right now, because you're clearly not in that space right now. And I need you to be there 100%. So I can have that honest conversation with them, just the way they do with each other and they do with me and I with them.
Very beautiful to hear you speak to about your team and the way you work with them. It's so much love and affection in a way as well. As their coach, sometimes it's also handy to have a certain distance. You speak about
Mm-hmm.
them and you speak about yourself doing certain things, and we is still you, the coach and the team that delivers. How has it ever happened that you were part of a problem, and how do you handle that situation, because you can't really coach yourself?
I have been, and I've learned to reflect on myself, because sometimes I would just also, if they're taking something to heart and they're banging their head, and I'm like, I'm feeling the same way, and maybe I'm feeling let down by whatever, and then I go like, well, no, I shouldn't really, because I need to reflect right now and so help them out. So get out of that space, right? And not be that close to the problem and see myself out. So it's a conscious reminder on my part to get out of the certain headspace if I'm way too into it, and understand that as a result of that, I'm not actually helping them. I'm a detriment and an impediment at the moment. So it's kind of like, take a different stance right now, because if they're that close to a problem they're dealing with, and if I'm, encouraging the problem to become even bigger, then I need to step away and I need to deal with that and I need to reflect, because I am not being helpful right now. And I need to consciously remind myself at times to do that. Like, step away. This isn't on you. This is, you're just becoming, impediment right now, and take yourself out of that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And
So
I'm good.
it's difficult at times, but I've learned to recognize the clues when I'm like too into it, to understand like I'm not helping them right now. I'm actually an issue and a problem and an impediment right now. So I will step away. And sometimes it's hard when you're working with a really good team and a dynamic team that you're helping out, to be able to do that. Like, I'm not serving them right now. I'm actually an issue and a problem. So I need to let it go.
Yeah, you get invested in the problem, because maybe sometimes
Too
we are
much.
part of the problem, right? Yeah, that's we're part of the team. It's very difficult to stay that neutral in a way.
Yes. But it's also understanding when you not need to be not part of the team and let them be a subset of the team themselves, and you be their coach or their teacher or their mentor, and understand like, you are now doing this and you actually need to switch the hat. And it's kind of like, go away from a moment and do that, and not, just like stir the fire, stir the pot. Instead, just like step away, consciously step away. You may want to say something, but it's like, refrain from doing that. And it's a conscious reminder on my part. It's like, I am too close to this right now and I need to step away. And I actually have a post that sometimes that I look into and like, I'm too close, step away.
I care too much. Sometimes that's a thing that
Mm-hmm.
coaches do. They care so
Yes.
much, and they just like want to take it from your hands and let me do that for you so that you feel better. But that's not going to help. Not going to make a self-organizing team, is it?
Yeah. And there were times when I would be like, even very directly, can you do this for us? I'm like, well, what makes you like think that I might have to do this for you when you can actually do it yourself? I'm like, you don't need me for this. And it's just like it was like, well, what's stopping you and preventing you from doing this yourselves? Like, do you really need me here? They're like, well, because you're so good at this. I'm like, not good enough of a reason. You can actually do this yourself, so you don't really need me. Like I'm just, a comfort zone for you right now. So
Mm.
get out of your comfort zone, and I want to enable you to do this on your own. So you don't really need me for this issue right now. And I'll be like, I'm stepping away. You figure it out.
Yeah,
And
you.
they're like, okay, what do I do? You know what to do. You've seen this before, and you don't need me. You got this.
Yeah, and if you're too close to a team, you can't do that because then you'll feel sucked into to this friendly relationship, like, oh, kind of owe it to them to fix this for them. It's always better to take a little bit of step back sometimes. How do you deal with people outside your team that take you for, I don't know, the spokesperson or the scrum masters? They sometimes have this, like, they're being seen as, you pick up all the pieces after the team, so here is my problem, you fix it now for me. How do you deal with people from outside the team that want you to be the
Yeah,
team?
I've actually received a great piece of feedback on that. Sometimes it's kind of like, and it was very direct, and I appreciated that so much. They went like, well, sometimes it's difficult to say or bring this forth because you have so much knowledge or you're so into this, and like it can become intimidating. And I'm like, oh gosh, I really don't want to do that. So how do I become less so? And what are the things that I need to, address so it's not like that? Because ultimately, I want people to be able to have an honest chat and not for be intimidated or anything of sorts, because we just don't want that. Nobody's going to open up to a person like that who comes off like all a know-it-all or something. So I was like, well, what are the behaviors, and can you give me more specific feedback on that? Like, because it's like, well, you always have an answer for something. I'm like, does that mean I'm solutioning? And they were like, at times you are. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. So I need to understand what behaviors drive that and address that, because that's the stuff that I don't want to do for anybody. I want them to figure out what they want to do on their own versus me telling them like what's worked in the past and what's worked somewhere. Sure, framework wise, yeah, I'll give you that. But as opposed to like, here's how you fix things, stay away from such conversations. So I've
Mm.
received great amount of feedback on that, and be like, okay, I need to tone it down instead of proposing here's how you handle things and here's how you do things. Well, have a more honest conversation on what they're actually trying to do and take myself out of that equation. So really stay in the coaching hat and the coaching seat versus, hey, here's how we've done this. I'm a mentor to you, and this is the things you can do. um, let's not have that conversation if that's not what's called for right now. Imagine what the clues are and figure out if that's what we are talking about versus what not. So even with my other scrum masters, I try to enable more so a conversation. Well, what have you tried so far? And like things like that, instead of like, hey, that team struggled in the past with this. What have you seen? Versus, I'm going to give you everything because I know them so well, and this is how I worked with them for 2 years. What are you noticing instead? So come in with a fresh perspective. I don't want to, be the person that comes off as intimidating. I've seen all problems and I've solved all problems. You wouldn't be here if that was the case, because they wouldn't need you. So it's sort of like, hey, how do I become a better mentor to my fellow scrum masters as a result, and take myself out versus like, here's my experiences with said team, and it's like, what are your experiences with said team, and like what have you tried and what's in your toolbox, and how can we scale that up, have different sort of conversations, just angled a little bit differently.
Yeah, and for people that are listening to our conversation that are not in the space of agile coaching, it's a really big differentiator of organizations working with agile is trying to create teams that self-manage, self-organize, self-deliver, self-prioritize. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the moment the coach steps in and says, you know what, let me tell you how to do that, or you know what, even better, I'll just fix it, or I'll just talk to this manager for you. that's kind of where you are taking all that precious self-organization away from them, and we're kind of like treating people as children again, and then they'll become dependent on you again, and then we won't have that precious accountability towards valuable work.
Yeah. We don't want that. People are more than capable of doing that themselves. It's just understanding what avenues they have at their disposal and maybe shedding a light on those a little bit, or just, giving them the courage to do that instead of, doing that for them, which is of no service to them or you, because you'll be like stretched too thin. And of course, you don't want to do that. People are perfectly able to handle things on their own. It's just like, do they have the tools and do they have the means to do that? And if they don't, let's have conversations about that and how we can actually address that versus, well, I'll go address it for you. I'm like, well, what have you tried so far and what hasn't worked and what has worked? And let's figure out, like, between all of those, what actually can work, and off you go. You can figure it out. I don't have to be in the uncomfortable situation for you. We can make the situation more comfortable by resolving some of the things that makes it uncomfortable.
And it takes time. It takes time to build such a high functioning, self-organizing team, and leadership that is looking at you from outside. They probably have an opinion on that. Maybe it's not going fast enough, or why don't you just do it because you have so much experience? You could just write that piece of code yourself, etc., etc. You could take the conversation elsewhere. How do you deal with those hovering leadership people that are expecting faster results from you and say, well, Agile is just too slow. It's not getting there.
Yeah, we have chats often on that front. It's kind of like, okay, it's going way slower than I expected. I'm like, well, what were your expectations then? This was 3 months ago. The scenarios and the circumstances have changed 3 months from when we last talked about this. So we've actually done these things. And instead of like, we're not going fast enough, like, look at what we've achieved already. Like, is this not quick enough? Like, because these are a bunch of things and a lot of good things happened. Like, what were your expectations? Oh, I didn't expect all that to happen. And I'm like, well, are we then going not quickly enough? Because we've done all these things. You didn't expect half of them. So what gives, right? Your expectations were way less than this then. And like just a constant reminder of like, we've achieved all these good things instead of like, we're not going fast enough. We haven't achieved X, Y, Z yet. Well, we haven't. And maybe we won't. And maybe that's no longer the ultimate outcome and the goal we're chasing either, because things may have changed along the way. And here's all the good things we've done to make them change. And like we've seen the fruits of our labor based off of that. And is this good enough? Chances are, yes, more than good enough. It's just having those conversations and understanding how far we've come versus what are we still chasing, right? Reminder of we've done 10 things that were really, really kick-ass and were really good, but your expectations were not even having those 10 things. So are we not going down quickly enough? Because we are. We've achieved many, many, many good things. And it's just a reminder of here's what they are.
And that makes me think that we also need to proactively manage stakeholders that are around our teams, that we proactively move towards them and say, hey, did you notice we did this today? Or did you realize that the team was able to hold their own retrospective this week? I wasn't even needed. Those are little measurements for success as well that we can share more proactively with leadership around us, for example.
Yeah. And I try to break it down, or at least work with teams to break it down so they're smaller chunks versus like these big, lofty expectations and goals. I'm like, here's the 5 things that can make that goal happen. And we're actually made 3 of those happen. So we're actually doing really, really well. Or, the outcome has actually changed based off of the circumstances that have changed. So what's the actual outcome we're seeking right now versus down the road, and understand that down the road it might not actually be what we set out to do 3 months ago. So are we having those conversations, and are we rewarding the good positive behaviors? And if not, why not? I mean, we should do it more often, and there's a different cadence we should should try, stuff like that. Just having that constant loop and having that space to have the conversations in, more often than not, we achieve really good things just by enabling that, stopping to actually have a discussion and conversations on the good things that we've done thus far.
Amazing. And so, a couple of questions before we wrap up our session today, Sibila. How can we encourage other people in the organization, or even maybe outside the organization, to start adopting a mindset of self-organization and honesty, openness? And I love the way you open sourced your work as well. How do you do that?
It just a reminder that it takes patience, that sometimes people really want to go quicker or they're impatient to achieve some results. So it's a constant reminder of like, it's the journey that takes you there, not like destination. You're chasing something and you don't even know if that's actually what you want to be chasing. Like, how do you get there? Have you achieved certain things? Are you stopping to smell the roses? All the good things are happening. Like, are you recognizing that? Just having that patience to do that and understanding like, the wheels and the business world will still move just the same way if you do this or not. But it's up to you. You just have to have that space and recognize that maybe the pace is now a little bit different. It's slower or it's quicker, but enable that space to have that conversation. And I know that folks can get really, really impatient and like, well, we're not far along enough. And I'm like, are we not? Because we've achieved all these things and we've done so much so far. And here's a list of things. And then I go like, well, you're probably right. We didn't think of that. Or we may have forgotten that. Or it was just like, oh, we were so busy to actually reflect on that and things like that. So it's just having that space to do that and just having that reminder and having somebody to be like the positive catalyst for those conversations and just enable the space to have them and not like have them on some certain cadence, but have them be more spontaneous than that and enable that kind of mindset and that those kind of behaviors and values to have that in.
That's brilliant. And one last question: how do you motivate people to own up to everything that needs to be done as a human? As you said, they need to put their camera on. They need to feel safe. They need to be able to share who they are. They need to be able to talk to stakeholders, etc. There are so many different things that they need to be able to do other than just build a brilliant product, because enabling that type of system actually creates a better product. How do you make people own this new framework of working?
This is where I would rely on data and stuff that I've collected along the way and stuff we want to measure. And as a result of like, hey, as a result of enabling certain values and behaviors, here's the outcomes that we're going to be seeking and here's like how we're going to actually measure against them. And it doesn't have to be like metrics, real metrics, but it can be data. It can be like, hey, on a quarterly basis, we'll reflect on our maturity as a team and our health as a team, and we'll look at what what looked like the quarter before looked like and be like, have we actually enabled ourselves to do certain things that we were going to say and try in the new quarter? If not, then why not? Are they still holding value? And if we've actually increased productivity, what were the factors when we increased the productivity? What were those? And it's just a collection of data and understanding, like, we'll reflect on the data, we'll look at it, we'll use it as our starting point to who we were when we first started versus who we are right now. Are things still measurable? Are the same things measurable? And if not, we'll understand like what they are. But it starts somewhere, and the collection of data just really helps with those behaviors and be like, okay, because most of us are visual beings and we'll rely on that. So if that data is telling you something and painting that picture, you'll be like, well, that really is a problem, and I didn't know how much of a problem it was until I actually looked at it and saw it as this picture. So we need to do something about that. And it's just a conversation starter, and it's up to us to understand like how we want to leverage that. But more often than not, relying on that type of data really helps us build positive behaviors and values.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're using in your conversation because when you talk about coaching, you talk about chats and conversations, but it sounds like you're using quite a lot of tools also to, as you say, visualize data and visualize ideas, and so you're facilitating a lot of. There must be a lot of time sitting in there in the design of some of these conversations. That may be a different topic for a different day,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I'm just really happy that we were able to talk, Sibila, today, because in the beginning it was very technical and how do you work on a technical moment, and it kind of took you on that journey on, but how does the coaching work, right? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
how does that work with a team, and especially with an agile team, which is quite a different type of team, and hopefully becomes more and more standard.
Yeah.
What is a question that you would have liked me to ask that I didn't, if there is any?
Hmm. I can't really think of much. I think we covered so much ground. And like you say, we started off very technical, but then we understood that it's the people to make the things go technically well and to make that machine run. So I'm glad that we were able to segue into that part of sort of like what makes the tech stack run, if not the people. And I think we nailed that. And I think that's great.
And so, what's next for you then, Sibila? After now, you're building a team of Scrum Masters. You're sharing all your knowledge and your experiences with them so that they can take over. What's next?
What's next is some standardization and some scaling up based off of what we have so far and understanding where we want to take it to the next level and understand what we share that's in common that we can all glean from, and then what makes us unique as well. And, you know, having a balance between the two and understanding like what to borrow from and what to enable and what to empower versus what not to dwell on, and what sort of to address is more so as negativity. So scaling up our system is the plan and standardizing, but again enabling the spots to still be individuals as well.
Yeah, yeah, not all fit in. We don't fit in boxes.
No.
Thank you so much, Sibila. I think we learned a lot today about some helpful tips as well on how to coach a team that's not in the office, and some really great tips there. And I think we covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much, Sibila. This was wonderful.